I just check if the sound is working? I don't hear myself. Good morning, can you hear me? Is the sound level okay? Fantastic. Well, good morning, everybody, and good morning to those watching online as well, and welcome to the Swedish Pavilion. My name is Helen Spence-Jackson, and I'm working for Environmental Defence Fund Europe, and I'm really pleased to be here this morning with some excellent speakers. I'm going to introduce them all briefly now, and then two of them are going to come and join us on the stage already. So we have Milton from Doconomy, Miguel from the UNFCCC, Malin from Mastercard, and then joining us online as well later in the event is Ellen from Einride. So the purpose of this session today is really to consider a little bit around enabling citizens making smart climate decisions. And it's clear that a lot of hopes are really pinned on new technologies, but this underestimates potentially the contribution that lifestyle choices can make. So if I can invite Miguel and Milton to come to the stage already. While they're just walking up, let me just say, yes, welcome. You might have seen in the program notes for this session that the IPCC has calculated recently that behavioural and social cultural changes could actually help us to reduce, or could help us to save 5% of all demand-side carbon emissions. But that's a huge amount of potential, but how are we going to actually get there? So Doconomy and UNFCCC representatives here are going to help set out their initiative that they have been carrying out to help us to change our consumption choices. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Milton first, who has got a small presentation, I believe. Over to you.
Does this work? Can you guys hear me? I can't hear myself. That's okay.
I think, yeah.
Switch the mics. Is this better? Oh, this is cool. These are quite something. Let's also see, can we see this? No. That's okay. Should we kick off?
Yes, please. So tell us a bit about the purpose of it.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor and a privilege to attend in the first place. We're here to talk about enabling smart lifestyle choices. And I think just maybe to start off, Miguel, you're the brains of this operation, but just to say a few words, like climate change to many people is sort of a cloud of unknowing, and we're sort of through the lifestyle calculator trying to make sense of it. And I think we all know that the IPCC report has stated quite clearly that lifestyle changes can be an integral part of the change, and we're trying to achieve that through the lifestyle calculator. But what's important is that even if you have full disclosure, even if you have all of the means to understand your footprint, it's quite, it's tough to actually do something about it. Even, most prominent behavioral scholars on this, Don Kahneman, Amos Tversky, Robert Schiller, Herbert Simon, they're all saying that satisficing or trying to take shortcuts in life on particularly as it relates to climate change, it's just because we're trying to avoid the cognitive dissonance arising from the difference between our thoughts and our actions. And so this is, I suppose, one way, our ambition to do something about that and democratizing the data and making it available to everyday people so as to help. Some people call it the ostrich effect, that you're trying to pull people's heads out of the sand and make it something that's just visible in front of your eyes. And I think the lifestyle calculator is one ambition, one way to get the data in front of people and enable those lifestyle decisions that we all know that we need to make in order to achieve some climate action. But I think just a couple of words to introduce. Yeah.
Well, so thank you. And in terms of actually bringing it alive, are you able to tell us a little about the methodology that you used in order to create the tool?
Yeah, sure. If I can take that one.
You might want to have that mic, I think.
Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. Good, yes, exactly. I think from our side, the main goal of the calculator was to, one, make a tool easy to use, easily available for anyone in the world to calculate their footprint. Because if one doesn't know what the footprint is, you can have very little understanding of what the changes in your lifestyle will mean. So the calculator hopefully helps you see that. And second one, citizen action and citizen advocacy is very important for governments also to maintain their promises and to make them even more ambitious. So if we help citizens understand better what's the impact of their personal actions, hopefully they will become more pro-advocacy, pro-climate action. So that was also part of the rationale, empower citizens so that they support more climate action. Now, in terms of the methodology, we have 2 steps that you can follow. One is an easy, quick calculation. You can answer 5 or 6 questions, and then you get an approximate calculation of your impact. This is for people who are on the run, who don't have the time to go into too much detail, but they want to have a quick estimation of what their footprint is. So if you go to the calculator, this is the first thing that you will see. It asks about the main sources of emissions that we usually have: energy, transportation, food, and a couple of other things. But then once you have this overall calculation, if you want to go more tailored to your personal lifestyle, more specific to your particular way of living, then you go into the advanced version of the calculator, and you have 30 something
35 additional detailed questions. Yeah.
35 additional questions that will tailor that footprint to your particular activities, and then will help you see, if I change my diet, if I turn down the heating a little bit, if I do this or that, what's the impact that it actually has on my footprint. Now, behind the calculator, the data is the most important thing. So we have tried to include as much data as is available from around the world for the different calculations of energy, transport, food, etc. In the cases where there is no country-specific information, then we are using global averages or specific information that comes from one country that does have estimation. And we hope that in the future we can include more countries, more regions, maybe even cities. New York, for example, has some very detailed transportation data. So we can include more granularity so that the numbers will be more meaningful to me as an individual. But that's the basics of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I think just to illuminate the fact that you were actually doing this calculator yesterday, no? We were talking about it before.
I'm a good moderator. I thought I should try before.
No, but I mean, it's fantastic because you said I don't want to call you out on this, but I will do it actually, because you were saying that you went through the first part of the calculator, which takes about 2 minutes to complete, which is the point, because the 2 minutes is, we all have sort of a limited capacity for concentration. There's so much white noise and information, and we wanted to make it available for people who have limited time. And so the fact that you did that is fantastic. And then if you want to go down to the detailed questionnaire, you can do that later. You don't have to do that right away. And that's also an update that we did, because we updated it in March. The initial launch was just a number of questions that required quite a bit of time. But now it's sort of simpler to go through the entire thing. And if you wanted to say, I flew, in my case, from Stockholm to Cairo and then Sharm el-Sheikh, it would be, you just say that you took a long flight in the brief questionnaire, but then you could actually go in the specific questionnaire and plug in from what airport to what airport you flew, and you'd get the exact emissions adjusted for high altitude effects and so forth. So, yeah.
It's true indeed, and in fact I learnt quite quickly where I could make a small change, and that brings me to my next question, Rich, is really around the learnings that you've experienced so far. It'd be very crucial, I think, that we don't just have a tool, but that people are using it, and that you're able to extract as well lessons from it. So can you give a little bit of an impression of the learnings that you've applied so far, as far as they're available at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, as far as they're available, it's been used in 151 countries, and we're super happy to see that traction in the year that it's been live, or just over half a year that it's been live since the updated version. And then, it's plus 20,000 users, which is a start, I suppose. And then what we can learn from the breakdown of the categories is that transport is the biggest across all countries. And then usually it's lifestyle, then it's home, and then it's food, in that order. And I suppose we can also say that the footprints are perhaps not surprisingly the highest in the western part of the world, particularly the United States. And they're lower in the global south. So that says something about the sort of initial information we can withdraw from the usage of the calculator. Miguel, do you want to add anything?
Yes, if I may, two more things. One is we have had plenty of requests from organizations that want to integrate the calculator into their own apps, websites, services that they offer. So this is also very encouraging. We have some numbers of direct users through the calculator, but we'll have to see also how many are coming through these partnerships. And the other one, we have done basically no promotion, right? It's minimum promotion that we have done, so all of this is organic. We hope with a little bit, as the word goes out or comes out, it will have more more uptake. In addition, the idea is to keep it up to date. There are plenty of calculators out there, and you can visit many websites and they have their calculator, but if you look into the data behind it, it may be 5 or 10 years old. So our goal is to make this calculator up to date, so every year it is updated so that you get the most accurate data possible.
So perhaps now might be a good moment in terms of using it in a commercial sense. Are you able to talk a little about the commercial opportunities that could be applied here in terms of enabling citizens to take action? Is that for Milton, apparently?
We're again immensely happy with the partnership that we have through the UNFCCC. So Doconomy has it available, so does UNFCCC, the Secretariat. We also have it available through Mastercard, and they've seen great traction so far, particularly in Germany. We have it through another client called Lichtblick, a German player. And then we've seen that people who are looking, corporate clients particularly, who are looking to offer a solution to their end users on engaging in climate action in sort of a quick to market capacity, have found this particularly useful. And so we're getting commercial requests for this sort of on a very continuous basis, which we're very happy to see. I should also say, we didn't mention this before, but what's obviously quite instrumental is that you can benchmark your footprint against the Paris Agreement. So if you know that you need to reach a 1.5-degree target, you'll see exactly what sort of journey you need to be on in order to mitigate your footprint and actually be within reach of what's the realm of possible.
Very interesting, thank you. Did you have any other points to add on this, or shall I bring Mastercard up to the stage now?
No, actually on the commercial side, it's all with Doconomy. From our side, it's the support to try to make the calculator, up to date and as accurate as we can in the methodology and everything, and up to the point where the user access it free of charge. Then from then on, the UNFCCC is not involved in the commercial part.
Understood. Great. Well, Milton, did you have any other slides that you wanted to share at this point, or is that the end of your presentation?
No, we've talked about this.
Yes?
No. This is, actually, yeah. I can make a note of this, actually. So Doconomy launched on the backbone of the lifestyle calculator. We launched in June something called Restore, which is a commercialization of the lifestyle calculator that is utilizing the same methodological framework that we've developed for the lifestyle calculator, but that is also tying together the end users or the consumers with corporates who are brave enough to be on a transparent platform in this way. So it's the first marketplace where users can buy products and services that are tailored towards their carbon reduction journey. So the user calculates their footprint, they realize which categories, in this case transport, that is the highest, and they get commercial offers on how to directly reduce that footprint. from partners who can verify exactly how much you can deduct your footprint by if you switch from, for instance, a fossil fuel energy provider to a renewable energy provider that is localized and available in your area. So that's another commercial aspect of it called Restore. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I can invite our next speaker to come up to the stage, I think you might need to step aside to make a little bit of space. Thank you. So you're very, very welcome. Would you like to just, first of all, introduce yourself?
Of course.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. I'm Malin Berge from Mastercard, leading our sustainability innovation agenda globally.
And can you explain also a little bit about what you do and in terms of where you're here today, where you see this tool working and enabling citizens in the course of your work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Happy to. So most of you joining us today probably have some type of relationship with Mastercard. In your iPhone, in your mobile wallet, or in your physical wallet, there is a Mastercard that you use every day for things that matters or not for you. What you might not be familiar with is how we see the role of what we've built the last 50 to 60 years and how we bring that onto the climate transition agenda. So if you think about it, what Mastercard does actually is to allow unknown parties across the globe to trust each other. We have a four-party model where a bank who is issuing a card to you as a consumer can use that at a merchant store who also have a bank to accept that payment. And you can leave that store and receive goods or service because those two circles means that you can trust the transaction that is taking place. Now, if you look at what that means for a role like Mastercard in driving the climate action agenda towards sustainable lifestyles, we have this amazing network of 22,000 banks being connected to the network today, reaching 3 billion people all across the globe and 90 million merchants. Now, that's a tremendous global network, but that network has no meaning in terms of the climate transition and climate action if the network is not activated. And that is why we last year announced the creation of Mastercard Sustainability Innovation Lab to, together with our network, banks, merchants, NGOs, government, civil society. I'm going to see if I can take a step without the background noise. We announced the Sustainability Innovation Lab, which is really acting as a catalyst to respond to activating our ecosystem. We have some beautiful background music here. So what we do is we really look at, okay, what are the trends and signals changing the way consumption might look like for decades from now or years to come. And some of the trends that we are looking into now is what we call the great decoupling. So we see a number of signals of the emerging decoupled economy. An economy where GDP growth continues, where profits continues, but with less negative impact on people and planet. Now, let's take a pause there, because some of our very respected scientists, they share that we shouldn't actually measure prosperity in terms of GDP growth, etc., going forward. What we've said then in our Sustainability Innovation Lab is that we don't think that measurement will change quickly enough for the world's global economies. So we accept that GDP growth, profit growth, etc., is the common language that everyone understands in the world. And then we look at what are the emerging areas in which a decoupled consumption, decoupled commerce can emerge. And looking at some of the data, let me take the subscription-based economy as an example. UBS launched a report recently stating that by 2025, the subscription-based economy is at $1.5 trillion US. Now that is a commercial opportunity. So what we do then is to look at how can we activate this network. Our R&D teams with partners such as Sustainability Forerunners from Sweden deploy new sustainability solutions, often tapping into startups that are pioneers, such as Doconomy. So the partnership with Doconomy was established in 2019. Last year we launched a carbon calculator available now to 22,000 banks across the globe. And that is one way to drive climate action, through education, because we know historically that a number of significant behavioral shifts have happened when education has been in place. Now, that doesn't necessarily meet a full audience of 3 billion people changing their lifestyles, right? So we're approaching it from different angles. And another example, very similar actually to the idea of Restore, is how we through our network can reward sustainable consumption choices. So currently, with the Sustainability Lab in Stockholm, together with a number of forerunner brands across food, fashion, and transportation, we're exploring how we can address the cognitive dissonance of consumers by starting to reward what the good choice looks like. Mastercard will never tell you what a good or bad choice is, but we can get access to the best available global data and add that onto solutions that we provide through our network, so that your bank can provide you a loyalty system rewarding you when you make a transaction with a significant lower carbon impact than the traditional alternative. So that is one of the explorations we are working on now, and in order to respond to the global market trend and signals as it relates to the emerging decoupled economy. And the commercial opportunities, I mean, they are, we can't see all the opportunities at this stage, I believe. Just for a company like Mastercard, we are all about these unknown parties trusting each other. And if you think about the proliferation of transactions in the circular economy and the value that each point of additional usage, or whether something is recycled, reused, etc., there is also a role we see that we in our network can take in order to further accelerate and drive that. And with that, Helen, I think I'm going to hand over to you to focus a little bit more into the transportation sector.
Thank you very much indeed. That's extremely interesting, and that question of trust, I can see, is really a driving force here as well. So indeed, we're going to turn now to bring in our remote participant from Einride. We heard from Milton already that one of the key areas in the tool was relating to transport. Good morning, it's very nice to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm going to kick straight off by asking you if you could talk a little bit about we've been hearing about the high impact that freight transport in particular has on climate footprints, and we're wondering how you intend to reduce this. But before you answer that question, perhaps you could also just briefly introduce yourself and your organisation as well. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Alan. Yes, so Einride is a freight technology company that enables a transition to low emission or zero emission transports by going digital, electric, and autonomous. And as been discussed here, transport stands for 7 to 8% of global emission. And there is both a question of how do we know how things are transported in a zero emission way versus a high emission way, but also how do we actually make sure that we transition the industries and the companies, enabling the choices of the companies to ship in a sort of electric and low emission way. So what we do is both support, sort of supplying the service of transporting fully electric in a cost competitive way already today, but we also provide the transparency through our platform in sort of what kind of emissions you emit as a company, and hence can give that information to the consumers to make sure that the citizens can make educated choices. One example could be Oatly, which is our first customer, where we went fully electric already in 2020. And of course, they use this in their communication to their customers to ensure that the customers know it's not only produced in a way that's sort of has a very low carbon footprint, but also in the way the goods are transported. And this, I think, is one of those areas where we want to ensure that the citizens of this world can make more educated choices, but by providing that data to our customers as the companies that provide the goods. But I think it's also a big challenge in the industry to make this transition. We see many companies want to go to electric transport, but there's a lot of barriers. It's an industry that's gone through very few transformation in the last 100 years. It's a very fragmented, low degree of digitalization, and we see the need of a change of the ecosystem to really enable an acceleration to electric transport, which we believe is a critical lever to really reduce carbon emissions in transport. That was a brief introduction of what we do.
Helen asks you to keep going. Her microphone didn't work at the moment.
All right, sure. No, but and I think there's a lot of things that can be done. And I think, one thing is what consumers can sort of pressure companies to make sure that they actually are very clear in communicating both how goods are being produced, but also how they are being transported, and hence the emissions through that. And we believe that a lot of the industry is now saying that battery electric transport will come, but we believe and we have proven that it can be done here and now. And I think making sure that society moves faster to low emission alternatives, the technology there, the solution is there, but it does require change. And I think that's what everything this week is about, is sort of how do we ensure that we change in the speed that's required. And I think it requires a lot from us as citizens in how we make the choices we make every day, but also in terms of how we pressure companies, regulators to allow that transparency. Many companies today don't actually know how much sort of transport, their own transport emit. And that is the first step, sort of getting that knowledge and the understanding. We have a digital platform that now enables that transparency already now in sort of your current state, but also tells you what can go electric here today and what is sort of makes business sense to go electric in a year from now or 2 years from now, as different technologies evolve. But I think that the main message from us is that sort of 40 to 50% of all ground transports can be electrified today in a way that makes business sense. So we can do it in a cost-neutral way. But it is a question of changing, and you can't just sort of manage transport the way you have with the sort of diesel and petrol fleet. You need to manage it differently, but it really can make business sense already from just the transport. But if we also get citizens to demand to see the emissions that transport, sort of how much the transport is part of this, then the business benefit for the companies to make this transition faster grows very rapidly. I think there's another aspect of this. I think sustainability is one of the core ones, but another part is actually democracy as well, and making sure that we make choices that support sort of economies and the energy supply that is more supporting democracies. So I think there's a lot of aspects to this, and I think as always, knowledge is the first step, right? Understanding how much different ways of transporting and goods are being produced, but also making those changes now. We don't have to wait till everyone has this knowledge. Going electric is the way to go, and we already know that now. Making sure we start making real change and real choice that affects our global carbon footprint, because we can't sit and wait. We need to start doing this now, and the technology is there. It is mature enough, but some of the ecosystem might need to change to really enable this. Consolidating transport, and making it digital planning is required to make this transition. So that is sort of our mission, to accelerate this change, both through data transparency and the actual electric transport.
I think, it's back. Thank you very much for that. Indeed, the sense of the transparency here being absolutely key in terms of people being able to understand their own actions is clearly key in creating an informed choice. But there's also this sense of linking it up to that corporate action as well. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to now bring back Malin from Mastercard, and have we still, yes, and
Doconomy as well, for a final round of questions. And you're staying on the screen with us here in the room, just so you're aware as well, and I'll make sure to bring you in to the discussion as well. So as a kick-off question for this final round, I'd like to know a little bit more about how corporates and bilateral organisations, for want of a better word, could collaborate better to ensure that the infrastructure can really enable citizens to make climate-smart decisions. I guess that might be you, Malin, yes, if you'd like to kick off on that one.
Sure, thank you, Helen. And I was reflecting upon what Ellen shared and Milton earlier in terms of the similarities also providing an assessment tool to the users. That's really fascinating in terms of, okay, provide a tool in the hands of the users for themselves to make a self-assessment, and thereafter provide the actionable, what are the first steps that I can take that have a significant change. So I really like the commonalities between those two very different application areas. Now, if I think about our role and our customers' role, we represent one of few industries, if you think about the citizen landscape, that is part every single day of someone's life. And we are there not only once per day, but we are there in many cases several times per day. So we really have, I believe, a responsibility and an obligation to use that role and use that connection and that communication link to educate, to show what good looks like, to start nudging. So that's really where I see it. Milton, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can just say, can you guys hear this mic? Yeah. One of the things that we speak of at Doconomy is the importance of the sort of troika, the triangulation of data, design, and language, right? And I think that's where we're sort of all three conjoining on those themes. And so someone yesterday said that transparency really is infrastructure, right? And I think what we're all trying to do is achieve sort of the collective action of being able to make responsible decisions and actually internalize all of the environmental externalities that go into the societal cost of our actual behavior. And so there's I suppose you can talk about it in different ways. In the relative absence of regulation, there needs to be a bottom-up pressure from the market, and that bottom-up pressure is enabled by the people who are standing in this room and everybody who is attending COP trying to make a difference. And so insofar as we can, to Einride's point, close the gap between sustainable profits and sustainable development, I think we're really well on the way. So I think that's just to add to your point.
And I think it's clear from what you've been saying that individual action can get us so far, but we also need to have these additional collaborations, and we need to build an ecosystem really to make this really fly. So what type of collaborations and ecosystems do you think need to be put in place? And I don't know, maybe that might be something that Einride would like to speak on.
Sure, I think, as you said, the ecosystem needs to change and evolve. And I think, it starts with the pressure from the consumers and the citizens. And of course, the more support we can get from regulators, the faster this will move as well. But I think it's really about, making it easier for companies to make the right choices as companies. For example, transportation being one of them, but there's, in how we produce things, there's a lot of other choices as well. And I think making sure that there's a lot of disruptors and startups trying to make sure the technology is there, but how do we enable the ecosystem of companies and service providers and NGOs and regulators and all to really make the right choices and making that choice easier by also being a smart business choice, because that will accelerate this change. And I think, you know, transportation is an area that is already there, but you know, there's both knowledge barriers as well as kind of industry barriers in charging infrastructure, connectivity, and all of these things. But there are players out there that can make companies sort of take these you know, routes that are much more better for climate already now. So I think there is alternatives out there, but it might not always be the traditional ones. Mm-hmm. So you might need to seek more information, but there's technologies in so many areas that really enable good business choices also being good for the climate. And I think, you know, having the pressure on data, you know, also accelerates, you know, the drive from companies to make those better choices.
Absolutely, thank you. I think in terms of that ecosystem piece, we really do need to see the entire system changing here in terms of that. Would you like to come in? Yes, Malin.
You. I was just thinking about, you know, how do you enable an ecosystem? And I think actually, as we see, our role is not that much of coming out with the best solutions to our network, but really finding the best solutions in the market, finding a good way to partner with them, whether they are big or small, bring them onto the Mastercard network of 22,000 banks. And by the way, when we had done that a number of times before, we realized, oh, there is a stop there. There is something happening, even though the best solutions are there, it's responding to clear needs amongst the retail customer base, etc. It's not implemented. Why isn't it implemented? Because parts of it is the whole OKR or the right KPIs aren't in place to measure that. But the other one is that, for a fact, banks have long IT queues, and there is a lot of IT old infrastructure in IT amongst banks. So what we did when we deployed the lab was to also build a labs as a service function for our customers. So we have a number of 100 people across the globe who are design thinking experts, full stack developers, UX designers, etc., etc., that we then bring as teams to our customers to deploy on their IT infrastructure. So that became kind of the final implementation or the route to implementation for us. So in that sense, there are a number of organizations who can be that connector, but doesn't necessarily need to deploy everything in-house themselves.
Well, thank you very much. And I think we've run out of time now, but I think one of the key things you just mentioned there is regarding implementation. And this is the COP of implementation. So I think we've got plenty of food for thought there in terms of things to take away. I will go back and have another look at that calculator and see which areas I can be able to change. I urge you all to have a look as well. And I think this is also a very interesting conversation in terms of the connection to potentially helping people also deal with climate anxiety. The sense of taking an action can really help to reduce emissions and can all make us part of the systems change that we need to see here. So thank you all very much indeed for attending today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you to the speakers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.